Alright, Nathan, we've covered a lot of classic slashers in the last few months. We've got Nightmare on Elm Street, Halloween, Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Have we missed any?
Nightmare Beach?
I have absolutely no idea what you're talking about.
You haven't seen Nightmare Beach?
We're talking trash about trash, aren't we? So I guess we're talking about the 1988 Italian slasher film Nightmare Beach, otherwise known as
Welcome to Spring Break.
This is a bit of an unknown one in comparison to your more famous slashers. How'd you actually find it, Nathan?
I was literally just clicking through Amazon Prime and I was like, that looks cool, and started watching it, and then I stopped and I was like, we have to watch this and talk about it.
Yeah, you rang me and said, there's this movie Nightmare Beach, it looks awesome, we should review it. It stars John Saxon. You know, John Saxon, who's in a heap of good slashers. A Nightmare on Elm Street, Black Christmas, and of course, My Mum's a Werewolf.
What the hell's happening to me?
Oh, don't be afraid. I can show you how to survive as a werewolf.
Oh, what wolf?
But yeah, I went to watch this movie and I couldn't remember the title, so I just searched Beach Horror Film John Saxon and got a hit for a film called
Blood Beach,
which is a second horror-themed beach film starring John Saxon, but that one's about a creature under the sand killing people. Like, what are the odds? I told you about it and you had to tell me it was the wrong film.
Yeah, I'm like, what? No, it's about a guy on a motorbike. What the hell are you watching?
Yeah, I know, I messed up, but to be honest with you, it looks like the kind of trash we love to cover.
I don't like sand. It's coarse and rough and irritating, and it gets everywhere.
So Nightmare Beach mostly takes place on Daytona Beach, Florida during spring break, and I have nothing to back this up, but I feel like, in true Italian B-grade film fashion, that was a tactical choice so they could use a hell of a lot of stock footage.
Yeah, the vibe for this film is, I have a lot of footage of Spring Break. What can I do with it?
Yeah, and they're going to make sure they use that stock footage so they can hit the hour-and-a-half runtime. That's why we don't have one, not two, but three beachside wet t-shirt competition slashed oiled up pose downs. Look, the 80s was a time of excess, and I think maybe this impacted the decision-making of many film producers at the time, who were using it for inspiration, among other things. For legal reasons, here's an unrelated clip.
I can't feel my face.
On that note, when do you think this movie might take place, Nathan?
Well, it's around the time where men wear red mesh muscle shirts.
Oh, and the shortest shorts you've ever seen. Look, the fashion throughout this entire film is horrible. It's almost like a parody of the 80s. And you see that as well with the concert towards the end of the film, which is borderlines on satire, even though it was actually filmed in that time period. But even though so much of this film has this like bright, bubbly 80s kind of tone, that's not where we start, is
Well,
it?
the movie starts pretty dark with a guy being executed, a guy called Diablo.
Yeah, he's a bikie being executed for murdering a local woman, and her sister is there to watch the execution. But there's some questions about whether Diablo actually committed the murder, or if he was set up by a local crooked cop, played by John Saxon. And because of this, Diablo swears revenge and says he'll come back.
Do you have any last words?
I've been framed.
But I'll come back to get even!
All right, how you gonna get him? Skeleton power?
But to be fair, the dude's name is legally Diablo, Spanish for devil, so it's like, I can see why maybe people thought it was him.
Yeah. What, that Diablo guy's a bad guy? Wow.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, this shift from this like dark, depressing tone with a character called Diablo to bright, sunny Florida is just so funny. It got a belly laugh out of me.
It just cuts to like the beach and people are hanging out and partying and stuff.
Few moments later.
That kind of sums up this movie though. Things just seem to happen and you really struggle to understand how you got from A to B. And it's not because nothing happens in the movie. It's almost like too much happens. Like there's actually about 4 or 5 plot streams that kind of come together in the end, but not really. But I guess our main characters are the 2 teenage dudes we're introduced to who are so memorable that I can't remember their names. And I can only recall them as Footballer and Red Shirt. And oh my god, is Red Shirt just the worst dude ever.
Oh man, Red Shirt. I think I've written it down like 3 times in my notes. Red shirt must die. God, I hate red shirt.
You want to get sloppy. You want to bump short hairs. I'm Ronnie Rivera, all-conference wide receiver. Hey.
He chucks like the 20 condoms at his mate, and he's like, you got to use all these by the end of spring break. You're like, what?
Yeah, he's just a total slasher film cliche. He's always trying to get his friend laid, but his friend is moping after having lost a big football game. And this character point is brought up so many times, I was thinking, okay, this is going to be part of the ending. Like, he's going to have to throw something like a football in the finale to save the day.
That doesn't come back.
No, not at all. It has absolutely no payoff. But look, we're trying to think about this in a logical way, and logic needs to go out the window a little bit. All that matters is that while our characters are partying and moping respectively, there's a killer out and about, and he's doing it in a pretty high-tech way. How does our first kill happen, Nathan?
Guy on a motorbike picks up a chick and electrocutes it by hitting a big red button. And then you're like, okay, so is it Diablo's back on a bike and he's made this thing?
Yeah, is it Diablo and he somehow found a high-tech bike or made it and now he's just killing people?
The people he killed have nothing to do with the start scene in the execution room. You think like he'd be hunting each of those people down? Like getting revenge? No, it's just random people.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously not him, but that doesn't stop the police and the mayor starting to think, oh, is it Diablo? Has he come back from the dead?
Maybe it was Diablo. It's not funny. Diablo's dead. You saw him executed. Right, Doc?
There have been documented cases where a massive shock can cause a catatonic, almost death-like state.
And look, I'll admit that, the first few victims are killed with electricity, which makes sense if it was Diablo because he was executed via electrocution. But he just starts using whatever method he can find. Like, the killer just takes out one girl in the most cruel way possible, and it's so random. He kidnaps her from the beach, takes her to a foundry, and puts her in front of a furnace.
And burns her. And she's just like there in front of the thing, and he opens the door and the flame shoots out of it. You're like, okay.
And she turns into a skeleton for some reason. Like she just opened the Ark of the Covenant in the first Indiana Jones film or something.
Who gives a
Okay, so this is where things start to get a little complex with the plot. Because these murders are happening, our crooked cop starts to harass the local biker gang who are called the Demons, and they're the gang that Diablo used to be the leader of. Shout out to the logo of their jacket, by the way, which is a nod to the logo of the Italian horror film of the same name, which is awesome and features some sick motorcycle action. But yeah, our cop spends most of the film investigating these bikers.
Yeah, but then even his plot gets weirder later on where they break into his trailer home and he's got like gimp suit.
Oh, which is another character point that just never pays off.
Oh, he then gets killed by the biker gang. You're like, okay.
Yeah, it feels like a red herring that's been inserted simply for the sake of having a red herring. To add more plot complications, but you really don't need to add any more stuff to this movie. Like, I mean, our viewers might be thinking, what? How can it be complex? It's just kind of like a killer killing people.
But then as it's going on, it adds all these plot twists and they're like, well, the mayor's involved. There's a doctor that suddenly becomes an alcoholic as it's going on, gets involved. There's a priest in it.
I know this sounds like the beginning of a joke. The mayor, the coroner, and a priest walk into a bar, but they're all massively involved in the plot. The mayor is trying to cover up the murders with the help of our crooked cop and the coroner, including the murder of Red Shirt, who dies about halfway through the film. Because they don't want spring break to be shut down, otherwise the town will lose money, which is a little like...
on Amity Island.
Yeah. It's just the plot to Jaws in that regard, which kind of makes me curious how a plot would work if you somehow mashed the two together. You have a story about motorbikes and sharks.
So we are jumping all over the place here because the movie does jump all over the place.
Oh yeah, there's no logical way to talk about the plot of this film.
No, there's no way you can talk about this logically.
And we're also skipping through a lot of plot points because if we tried to put everything that's in this film into this video, it would be just as long as the film itself. Like, we haven't even mentioned that Footballer teams up with the sister of the original girl who was murdered that Diablo was executed over. But I mean, in the end, it doesn't really change much in regards to the plot. It's just more things that just seem to happen.
But the actual killer is... Who's the killer?
Ah, well, spoilers, but the killer is not Diablo, not the crooked cop, but actually the preacher. And all because his daughter is going out and partying and he thinks everyone around is a sinner.
His daughter's going out, yeah, and she doesn't want to go to prayer group with him. And he's like, oh, you know, it's not good for you, darn it.
I guess they were trying to give him a motive and, you know, foreshadow it a little bit.
I wreak his vengeance on those who flaunt his will. Everyone must die, like Diablo.
It's pretty half-assed, but I guess golf clap for effort. But when they revealed him, I was like, who? Oh, that's right. That character that was only in a few scenes and then wasn't featured for 40 minutes.
It's that lanky old dude. Okay.
Well, his age might explain why the chase scenes were so fast-paced and riveting in this film. Honestly, they were like they were out of a comedy. If he went any slower on the motorbike, he'd be at a standstill.
Than the speed of sound!
Was that the lamest kill for the bad dude at the end when he dies? He just like crashes his bike into like an electrical line or something.
It is the funniest kill in that it's meant to be the big bad dying and it's the quickest, most convenient kill in the film. It just accidentally happens.
Just like, whoop.
Look, most movies aren't shot in sequential order. So, you know, you don't start with scene one and end with the last scene.
No.
But I wouldn't be surprised if this film was and they just went, we're running out of film. Like, we literally don't have much film left in the canister.
Yeah, we need to kill this guy.
He needs to be dead within 10 seconds. Let's just get him to run into something. Look, this isn't a good movie in a traditional sense, but it's a great one to watch with some friends and a few beers. Do you recommend it, Nathan?
Oh, I recommend it. Yeah, straight up. I'm so happy I found it.
Oh, I'm happy you found it. I'm actually going to rewatch it because there's just so much background stuff going on. So many characters have little mini narratives, like the drunken football fan.
It just shows up like 2/3 of the movie. Go Gators! Just yelling it out randomly.
Go Gators! How about them Gators?
He gets arrested. Go Gators!
Yeah, and you actually see him pop back up a few times. He's probably my favorite character in the film, just because I was waiting for him to reappear. That's how you write a suspenseful film.